Welcome to Infernal History. Today, we're diving into a dark and gripping chapter of Australian history, the era of the infamous Sydney Razor Gangs. Between the 1920s and 1930s, these gangs wielded their razors not just as grooming tools, but as weapons of terror. Our journey will take us through the violent streets, Sydney, Australia, and especially Darlinghurst, known at the time as Razorhurst, and we'll uncover the stories of the notorious figures who ruled the city's grimy underbelly. Stay with us as we explore the rise and fall of these gangs, the bloody battles that define them, and as always with our channel, the effectiveness of their signature weapon, the razor. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. Today's video contains descriptions of graphic violence, criminal activities, and other sensitive material. Viewer discretion is advised. Although these stories are historical and authentic, they are also harrowing. But if you're fascinated by accounts of crime and the darker aspects of human nature, you're in for a treat. Picture a time when carrying a razor blade was as common as carrying a phone today. But these razors weren't just for shaving. They were instruments of extreme violence, fear, and control. Just imagine you're walking down a dark, narrow alley, the sound of footsteps echoing off the closely packed buildings. Suddenly, a glint of steel catches your eye, but by then, it's already too late. The Sydney Razor Gangs reigned supreme from 1927 to 1930, a period marked by ruthless gang wars and power struggles in a relatively young nation that had started out as a penal colony with a reputation for lawlessness. Sydney, and particularly its inner-city slums, became a bloody battleground for supremacy in the criminal underworld. The reign of terror brought on by a new breed of urban gang and their bladed weapon of choice lasted from 1927 to 1930. This era of extreme violence was triggered by a perfect storm of societal and legal changes. New gun licensing laws in 1927, stricter firearms regulations were introduced, making it more difficult for criminals to obtain and carry guns. This created a vacuum that would soon be filled by a more insidious weapon, changing drug laws. The criminalization of cocaine created a lucrative black market, with rival gangs fighting for control of distribution networks. Liquor licensing, restrictions on alcohol sales, led to a boom in illegal sly grog shops, another source of criminal income up for grabs. Prostitution and illegal betting. The sex trade and underground gambling operations were additional prize territories in the underworld war. It is said that the Razor's rise to prominence can be traced to a single, brutal incident. During a bar brawl involving a visiting sailor, the damage inflicted by a straight razor was so severe and effective that it caught the attention of the criminal element. Unlike firearms, razors were not subject to legal restriction. They were considered everyday grooming tools, carried by respectable gentlemen. This loophole would soon be exploited to devastating effect. The major players. At the heart of Sydney's Razor Gang Wars were four primary factions, each vying for supremacy. Tilly Devine's gang, led by the infamous brothel madam, Matilda Tilly Devine. This group controlled much of the city's sex trade. Kate Lee's crew, headed by Kathleen Kate Lee, a rival madam and sly grog queen. This gang battled Devine for control of various criminal enterprises. Norman Brune's outfit, a formidable gangster from Melbourne. Brune arrived in Sydney with the ambitions to take over the local rackets. Phil the Jew Jeff's mob, another powerful criminal figure. Jeffs commanded his own faction in the underworld war. Despite using other weapons like guns, knuckle dusters, and clubs, the razor became the preferred choice. Its lack of bulk and the silent nature of its attacks made it ideal for the densely packed, poorly lit streets of Sydney. These dark, narrow alleys provided perfect cover for ambushes. The razor gangs left their mark not just on their victims, but on society. The streets of Darlinghurst, or Razorhurst, saw numerous battles for control. The gangs thrived on standing over prostitutes, forcing women into prostitution, and controlling drug runners and cocaine merchants. They also dominated illegal booze production, sales, and bookmaking. Many brutal brawls were recorded when Melbourne-based Norman Brune and his gang versus local Sydney toughs. Brune, a notorious gangster, was known for his violent tactics and ruthlessness before meeting a particularly violent death in 1930, stabbed before being shot 5 times. Lived by the razor, died by the razor. Sydney newspapers at the time were filled with accounts of explicit violence of men and women slashed in the face, necks, and body who would almost never name their attackers, and instead exact their own personal vengeance, continuing a vicious cycle of tit-for-tat razor attacks and ambushes. The impact on society was profound. The fear these gangs instilled changed how people lived. Mothers feared for their children's safety, and entire communities were paralyzed by the constant threat of violence. So, how effective was the razor as a weapon? As usual, we rate the weapon based on various crimes like range, deploy time, ease of use, cost, legality, effectiveness, and the number of deaths attributed to it. Stay tuned to see how the razor squares up. The gangs of Razorhurst were more than just violent thugs. They were part of a broader social upheaval. The densely packed housing and unplanned streets of Sydney provided a perfect environment for their activities. With no grid system or flow, these dark, dingy paths became hunting grounds for unsuspecting victims. The rise of the razor as a weapon was partly due to its inconspicuous nature. As a common grooming tool, it didn't raise suspicion, but in the hands of a gang member, it became a deadly instrument of control. This period saw a unique form of urban warfare, where stealth and surprise were as crucial as brute force. Now, let's break down the razor's effectiveness as a weapon in our rating system. Range, very limited. The razor is a close combat weapon, effectively only at arm's length. Deploy time, reload, extremely quick to deploy. The razor can be drawn and used almost instantly. Ease of use, skill required. Minimal skill required to inflict damage, but precision can enhance effectiveness. Cost, very low. Razors were inexpensive and readily available. Possible legality, legal to carry as a grooming tool, making it a perfect choice. Effectiveness, highly effective in instilling fear and inflicting non-lethal but severe injuries. Number of deaths, while not primarily a killing weapon, it caused countless disfiguring injuries, maiming and numerous fatalities in the context of the razor gang wars. The razor's blend of accessibility, ease of use, and psychological impact made it a formidable weapon in the underworld. What do you think of our rating? Let us know in the comments. Do you agree or have your own thoughts on the effectiveness of the razor? As we continue, let's delve deeper into the notorious figures behind these gangs. Tilly Devine and Kate Lee were not just gang leaders, they were shrewd businesswomen who controlled vast criminal enterprises. Tilly Devine, known for her sharp tongue and sharper blade, ruled the brothels of Sydney. Kate Lee, on the other hand, dominated the illegal liquor trade. Their rivalry was legendary, leading to numerous confrontations and violent skirmishes. Despite their differences, both women shared a common trait, a steadfast determination to control Sydney's underworld. Phil the Jew Jeffs was another key player, known for his cunning and ruthlessness. Jeffs controlled drug trafficking and illegal gambling. His operations were considered more sophisticated, making him one of the most respected gangsters of his time, and one of the few who survived the era, dying in 1945 in his Ettalong mansion. Norman Brune, a former sailor turned gangster, brought a new level of brutality to the streets. His gang was known for their vicious tactics and willingness to engage in bloody battles. Brune's leadership was marked by a series of high-profile confrontations, which left many scared and some dead before his own violent demise. The downfall of these gangs came as law enforcement began to crack down on their activities. Increased police presence, along with stricter laws and regulations, slowly eroded their power. By the early 1930s, the era of the razor gangs was coming to an end. Many gang members were arrested, and the streets of Sydney gradually became safer. Subscribe, comment, like, and give us your feedback. If you want to see more content like this, or have any suggestions, let us know. And finally, let's reflect on the impact these weapons had on society. from the fear they instilled to the lives they changed forever. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time as we uncover more intriguing stories from the past. Goodbye.